Since we concluded in our talk last night about Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni, I thought to go deeper into a section of that very famous part of Srimad Bhagavatam. As you recall, maybe from your own reading, if you've read the 9th canto, or the brief sketch that we presented yesterday, Durvasa Muni is a great Brahmana and mystic yogi. But in relation to Ambarish Maharaj, Durvasa Muni is not known as a bhakta. He's a very Vedic, super Vedic Brahmana and extraordinary mystic yogi. And so he totally didn't understand Ambarish Maharaj. He didn't get it. He didn't understand the power of bhakti. He thought, this Ambarish Maharaj, he's emperor of the world. He's certainly absorbed in world affairs because he's emperor of the world. And he's a householder too. A wife and children. He's got untold opulence, power, and he's dared to take his meals before I did when I am his guest. And this is against all Vedic principles for treating a guest, and especially for treating a Brahmana. And he's simply a Kshatriya, an administrator. So Durvasa Muni is known for his anger. And he just lost it when he found out that Ambarish Maharaj had done what? Drank water to break the fast so that Dwadasi would be celebrated properly. And he did it under the advice of Brahmanas. But Durvasa Muni didn't care for that. You've broken the fast before me. You've eaten before I've eaten. See, what happened was Durvasa Muni had gone to the river to bathe before lunch. And when the fast was supposed to be broken, but Durvasa Muni got lost in his mystic yoga samadhi. He was like a Brahmavadi. He was focused on Brahman, the impersonal manifestation of the Supreme Personality Godhead. So he came back late, and he realized by his mystic power that Ambarish Maharaj had already broke the fast by drinking water. So Durvasa Muni was enraged. He felt more than slighted. He felt offended to the max. This shows you that you can have so many talents, so many abilities. You have performed so many austerities, but your heart is hard. We don't want to become like that as devotees, hard-hearted in devotional service. There are standards to be maintained. There is proper achar, behavior. But we don't want to discourage devotees, minimize devotees by throwing around our status. Bit of swagger. Well, I've been around for 10 years, you've only been around for 1 year. Remember the example I told about Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was presented with a devotee who was fond of correcting others, fond of pulling others up straight. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, it's a great austerity to correct others. Why are you so eager to undergo such austerities? Srila Saraswati Thakur explained that I have to do it as my service. Why are you so eager for such an austere service of correcting others? So Durvasa Muni just lost his temper completely. He's famous for that. And he cursed Ambarish Maharaj by creating with his mystic power, he invoked a fiery demon to attack and kill Ambarish Maharaj. So you wonder, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a Brahmana and a mystic yogi, but if the heart is hard, if it's not softened by bhakti, these things happen. You become puffed up with your mystic power and Brahmana tejas, your Brahmana potency, to curse others, or to even pull out of nowhere these extraordinary demon. And so the fiery demon advanced toward Ambarish Maharaj, who didn't flinch. Ambarish Maharaj was thinking, I want to respect the power of the Brahmana. Durvasa Muni is a Brahmana, and he's made a display of his Brahmana tejas, his Brahmana power. So I respect that. Let's see what happens. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead had already assigned to Ambarish Maharaj the protection of his Sudarshan chakra. In other words, Ambarish Maharaj, he never realized that he had access to such power. The power is not his. The power is coming from his surrender to Krishna. So he was not thinking that, oh, I've got power to counteract Durvasa Muni's power. He just thought, Durvasa Muni's a Brahmana, I should respect him and his potency. What's he done? He's created this demon. I'll just depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's a little hard to understand because you're thinking, well, he's a Kshatriya, he should defend himself, right? And indeed, if someone attacks a devotee, it's not that the devotee should just be acquiescent. Do with me what you like, I'm surrendered. No, you either get out, run away, or you protect yourself as best you can. Why? Because you know this body is engaged in Krishna's service. It belongs to his pleasure. Unless Krishna wants me to give up this body right now, I'll protect it because it's useful for Krishna's service. So we shouldn't use Ambarish Maharaj's passive example as indicating to us that we should just allow ourselves to be violated. But Ambarish Maharaj is thinking, if it's time for me to go, I'll go, if that's what the Supreme Personality of Godhead wants. This Brahmana is enraged. He's created something with his mystic potency. I want to respect that. Sounds a bit difficult to understand, yes? Especially in this age of Kali, if someone just looks at you the wrong way, you're ready to retaliate, right? No matter who it is, your own family member, your own partner, why'd you look at me like that? You got a problem. So the Sudarshan chakra finished off the demon and then went after Durvasa Muni, who fled all over the three worlds. You get a whole tour of the universe as Durvasa Muni is running, trying to escape the Sudarshan chakra, which is scorching his back and about to incinerate him. So he's on the move. And he gives you, as I said, a whole tour of the universe. he gets up to Brahma, and Brahma says, I can't do anything for you. You made a great offense. And he goes to Shiva. Shiva tells him, I can't do anything. He even enters Vaikuntha to see Lord Narayan, who tells him, what can I do? You've offended my devotee. You see, Durvasa Muni has appealed to all these personalities. Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu. Save my skin, save my skin. And he's supposed to be the mystic yogi, whereas Amrish Maharaj is the householder emperor. But when Amrish Maharaj is confronted with the fiery demon, he doesn't flinch. And when the great mystic yogi is being scorched by the Sudarshan chakra, he's running everywhere, thinking, I got to protect my body. I've got to protect my body. So just see. Now, some of you may be wondering, how is it that Durvasa Muni could enter Vaikuntha? Sounds like something our Damodar Krishna would come up with, right? Right? I knew it. Technicality. As Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in one purport, just like a king can sometimes allow all kinds of visitors into his palace for entertainment of the residents of the palace. Similarly, Lord Narayan can allow some quick access to Vaikuntha to various sages, like the four Kumaras, to demons. What to speak of Durvasa Muni? Allow some temporary entrance just for the entertainment of the residents of Vaikuntha. Kind of like a circus, you know? At the circus, people go to see bears and lions and other things like that. And so, for the entertainment of the Vaikuntha Vasis. You see this sage? It's come from the material world. You see this demon? It's come from the material world. What do you think of this? But it's just for a brief moment. Then they're gone. So that's how Durvasa Muni got to enter Vaikuntha and speak to Lord Narayan, who told him, I can't do anything to help you. You've got to approach the devotee that you've offended. And so that's where we are in today's discussion. Durvasa Muni is falling down at the feet of Narayan, scorched by the heat of the Sudarshan chakra. His whole body is trembling. He's the great mystic yogi. His whole body is trembling. Oh Lord, and he glorifies Narayan. Oh infallible, unlimited Lord, protector of the entire universe. You are the only desirable objective for all devotees. I am a great offender, my Lord. Please give me protection. Sounds good, huh? Oh, my Lord, oh, Supreme Controller, without knowledge of your unlimited prowess, I've offended your most dear devotee. Very kindly save me from the reaction of this offense. You can do everything, for even if a person is fit for going to hell, you can deliver him simply by awakening within his heart the holy name of your Lordship. Great prayers. But what's the response of Lord Narayan? So that's what we'll start with today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Aham Bhakta Paradino. Yasvatantra Ivatvija. Sadhu Grasta Hidayo. Bhaktar Bhakta Janapriya. Aham Bhakta Paradino. Yasvatantra Eva Dvija. Sadhu Grasta Hidayo. Bhaktar Bhakta Janapriya. Aham Bhakta Paradino. Yasvatantra Eva Dvija. Sadhu Grasta Hidayo. Bhaktar Bhakta Janapriya. Vaishnavis. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Aham, I, Bhakta Paradina, am dependent on the will of my devotees. He, indeed, Asvatantra, am not independent. Iva, exactly like that. Dvija, O Brahmana, Sadhubi, by pure devotees, completely free from all material desires. Grasta Hridaya, my heart is controlled. Bhakti, because they are devotees. Bhakta Jana Priya, I am dependent not only on my devotee, but also on my devotee's devotee. The devotee's devotee is extremely dear to me. So this is an enriched word for word section by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, and he'll expand upon those expanded synonyms when he gets to the purport. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahmana, I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not all independent. I am not at all independent, because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires. I sit only within the cores of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee? Even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. Purport. All the great stalwart personalities in the universe, including Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, are fully under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead is fully under the control of his devotee. Why is this? Because the devotee is anya virashrita shunya. In other words, he has no material desires in his heart. His only desire is to think always of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how to serve him best. Because of this transcendental qualification, the Supreme Lord is extremely favorable to the devotees. Indeed, not only the devotees, but also the devotees of the devotees. Srila Narottama Das Thakur says, Chariya Vaishnava Seva Nishta Hayeche Teva. Without being a devotee of a devotee, one cannot be released from material entanglement. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu identified himself as Gopi Bharju Parakamalayor Dasa Dasanu Dasa. Thus, he instructed us to become not directly servants of Krishna, but servants of the servant of Krishna. Devotees like Brahma, Narada, Vyasadeva, and Shukadeva Goswami are directly servants of Krishna. And one who becomes a servant of Narada, Vyasadeva, and Shukadeva, like the 6 Goswamis, is still more elevated. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur therefore says, Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasada. If one very sincerely serves the spiritual master, Krishna certainly becomes favorable to such a devotee. Following the instructions of a devotee is more valuable than following the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. Translation again. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahmana, I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent, because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires. I sit only within the cores of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee? Even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. Om Agana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militang Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we seem to have a contradiction here, because you thought that Krishna is completely independent, which he is, but then again, he's saying, I'm not at all independent. I'm dependent on my devotees. But that's still his independence because he chooses to do that. He's not forced. Krishna is not subject to cause and effect. He's not subject to time. And certainly he's not subject to the three modes of material nature, which bind the conditioned soul. The acharyas explain that the three modes of material nature are like a noose made of three types of rope. And the noose, you can just imagine, is around your neck. But Krishna is beyond the modes of material nature. He's not forced to appear. And when the Shastra explains that he takes birth, this is pastime. Sometimes the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears apparently out of nowhere. Sometimes he appears as if coming from a parent, from a mother. But it's all his Leela. No force of biology, no force of the laws of nature, no force of the three modes of nature. Everything about Krishna is beyond the material energy. Sometimes the Shastra says Krishna is nameless, formless, and inactive. So what does that mean? Those who are impersonalists really focus on those statements and make them into the all in all. Whereas if you take the Shastra as a whole, and especially you take advantage of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Vyasadev's commentary on his own Vedanta Sutra, then you'll see what it means truly that Krishna is nameless, formless, and inactive. He's said to be nameless because it's impossible to describe him fully. It's impossible to list all that he is, all his qualities. So therefore, nameless. You may note when you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita that persons are named according to a certain quality or activity. But Krishna is nameless because he has unlimited activities, qualities. But when we say Krishna, the unlimitedly attractive, that includes everything. Why is Krishna formless? Obviously, he has no material form. Therefore, you could say he's formless. He can present his form before you and disappear from your sight, as if his presence is dissolving. But Krishna is eternally present, and his leelas are eternally present. But do we have the power of vision to see? Just like sometimes it's said, using ordinary language, that Krishna assumes a certain body. That simply means that the incarnation, which is hidden from your ordinary vision, suddenly appears. That Krishna so-called assumes a body, doesn't mean that the body is created by Maya, by the material energy, or destroyed by the material energy. It's just, now you see him, now you don't. But he goes on existing eternally, beyond your sense perception. And all of Krishna's activities are eternal. That means there's never an end to any of his pastimes. They're going on somewhere. This is what it means, Nitya Leela. You don't see them, but they're going on somewhere. And what about his being inactive? That means he's not forced to act by the laws of nature. His activities are totally free from material cause and effect, material motivation. Whereas we have to take a certain body because of our interaction, our past interaction with the laws of nature. We have to take a certain body in a certain situation, and we have to give up the body. But for Krishna, there's no difference between his self and his body. And that is also the case for the residents of Vaikuntha, the residents of the spiritual world. There's no difference between the self and the body. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, it's described that the residents of Vaikuntha have, each one has more mystic powers than what's available in millions of universes combined. But they don't like to show it because they just are focusing on serving Narayan. This is why when Gopakumar was at the gates of Vaikuntha, having been transported there by the Vishnu Dutas, they left him at the gate to go inside and make sure that Gopakumar was on the list for entry. So while he's waiting for them to return, so they could escort him into the Vaikuntha-pur, the Vaikuntha city, he saw all these extraordinary looking persons. And he thought, each one, oh, this is Narayan. And he would call out to them, oh, Supreme Personality Godhead. And they would look at him like, what's wrong with you? Or they block their ears. Because he's seeing Sarupya, the liberation known as Sarupya. Sarupya means you have the same form as Lord Narayan. And so Gopakumar was just overwhelmed by seeing such personalities. And sometimes it seemed that each successive personality that he saw had more opulence than the previous one. But it's described by Sanatana Goswami that the Vaikuntha Vasis can reveal or not reveal their splendor, and they can reveal it to varying degrees. Yet there is a way to distinguish between Lord Narayan and the Vaikuntha Vasis, and Gopakumar had to learn that. That's why Lord Narayan has the Srivats, the tuft of white hair on the chest. But Narayan has a Satchidananda Vigraha, a form of eternal knowledge and bliss, and so do the residents of Vaikuntha. So there is no question of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or any of his expansions and incarnations coming under the influence of material nature or acting under the influence of material nature. As long as you are subjected to material nature, you can't be independent. And yet, it's so amazing, isn't it, that this is the desire of the conditioned soul. I want to be independent. My will be accomplished. I want to be independent in my pleasure seeking and my pleasure experiencing. I want to be an independent pleasure seeking unit and pleasure getting unit. Yes, I'll take this, and I'll take that, and this will be for me, and that'll be for me. We present ourselves as competent pleasure-seeking units. It's true that we have some remnant of the Hladini Shakti, the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's there in his parts and parcels, but only to a tiny degree, and it's presented pervertedly. That's why we're expressing our pleasure quest through matter. The pleasure potency that is there unlimitedly in the Supreme Personality of Godhead is there in us as minute particles to a tiny degree. And then it's being expressed pervertedly through matter. So this is why in this creature or that creature, whether another human being or another creature, you see a little bit of attractiveness, a little bit of pleasure, potency, pleasure, hope, because they have a tiny bit, but it's expressed pervertedly and it's quantitatively not enough to satisfy you for long. And that's why you get angry. The love I saw in you was just a mirage. There was something you saw, but it's so tiny. It's not enough to fulfill you. It's not enough to satisfy you. There's something there, but it's coming out pervertedly and so minutely. And you drive yourself crazy. I thought something was there, or there was something there. We almost had it. But it's never enough. It's just enough to torture you. And so this is why you become hard-hearted and frustrated, destructive, violent even. And then you just have to take intoxication to calm yourself down, because you can't be fulfilled, because the pleasure potency in you is quantitatively so tiny, and it's perverted by expression through matter. But Krishna is known as Achyuta, infallible. That means he never seeks to enjoy through matter. Of course, for Krishna, there's actually no matter. Everything is his energy. You see matter because you don't see the connection between the energy and the energetic source. So your vision is different. So here, Lord Narayan is explaining to to Durvasa, I'm completely under the control of my devotees. I'm not at all independent. I choose to come under their control. Because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires, I sit only within the cores of their hearts. So now you may think, well, completely devoid of material desires. What's the purport say? Because the devotee is anya vilashita shunya. In other words, he has no material desires in his heart. Well, you say, how is this going to apply to us? It's like someone who's in their first year at school or someone who's in kindy and they're hearing about what students at the uni study. Oh, that's so far beyond me. What's the point in my hearing about it? But one of my points in presenting this section of Bhagavatam is so that we can see what is the full potential of bhakti, which is that Krishna agrees to come under the control of his harmonized devotee, his devotee who's harmonized to his pleasure. This is highly personal. So you have to begin somewhere. So hearing about Ambrish Maharaj, hearing about what the Supreme Personality of Godhead is telling Durvasa Muni doesn't discourage you, it inspires you. What kind of examples can I give? If you were a moviegoer or romance book reader, we have any ex-romance book readers here? No, no one wants to admit. Come on. No? Krishna, you were a romance book reader? Huh? Anyway, the men want action movies like Terminator or something like that. But when you see that in the movies or when you read it in the books, yes, this could be for me. You develop aspirations. Similarly, when you hear about what Lord Narayan is telling Durvasa Muni, it develops in you aspirations, and aspirations are so important. You have to begin somewhere. Why be afraid or demotivated by knowing that you have to begin somewhere? Whatever you do, even in ordinary activities, you have to begin somewhere. Whether it's a business, the business has to begin somewhere. Your studies at school have to begin somewhere. Relationships have to begin somewhere. And you become inspired in even ordinary activities by hearing about those who are fully developed in those activities. It's like I was asking Gopal Guru Prabhu about this WhatsApp photo of his wife and him all dressed up attending some business gala event. So the purpose, is to associate with those who are making business and really getting it together. So similarly, by hearing about Ambarish Maharaj and what the Lord Narayan is telling Durvasa Muni, it inspires you. And certainly it purifies you while hearing it. Whereas hearing about material accomplishments and material desires simply pollutes you more and more. But hearing about the activities of Krishna and his devotees is not meant to be discouraging, it's enlivening, and it purifies your consciousness. And we need to hear how Krishna responds at the peak levels of bhakti. Otherwise, we think, I'm just following the rules and doing everything I have to do, but that's going to be it. So you have to know what is the goal of bhakti. Otherwise, you may think it's just about restriction, regulation. And so you'll start thinking, how long can I hold out doing this? So this is my presentation of why we should be very eager to hear about this intimacy This is very personal, very intimate. I'm completely under the control of my devotees. I sit only within the cores of their hearts. So what kind of devotee gets this full treatment? We shouldn't be envious and just, well, that's so far beyond us. Just forget it. I don't want to hear about it. What's that got to do with me just trying to control my wild mind and senses? But you can control your wild mind and senses by hearing this. So what is so special about the devotee that he can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead? We read in the purport, his only desire is to think always of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and how to serve him best. So if you're starting off doing that, always thinking, how can I best serve Krishna? You're on the path, you're on the roadway, the motorway. And as both the synonyms and the verse and the purport say, even devotees of the devotee get this special treatment. And the example is given of Lord Chaitanya himself. Gopi Bhartu Padakamalaya Dasa Dasa Nudasa. I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, who's the maintainer of the gopis. And then we get this instruction from Srila Prabhupada, quoting Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasada. If one very sincerely serves the spiritual master, Krishna certainly becomes favorable to such a devotee. Following the instructions of a devotee is more valuable than following the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. Of course, the devotee is instructing what the Supreme Personality of Godhead instructs. Not that the devotee makes up something and says, see, because I'm a devotee and saying it, it's more valuable than the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No, a real devotee simply says what Krishna says. But Krishna makes it so that if you take it from the devotee, that's why in Bhagavad Gita he has Arjuna to declare it. Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashati. Arjuna, you say it. That my devotee is never vanquished. So we should become enlivened by this intimacy in the relationship. By Krishna's will, he becomes dependent on his devotees. He can't give up his attachment for his devotees. So Durvasa Muni could be saying, well, wait a minute now. Don't you see my suffering? Shouldn't you be compassionate? And we see the compassion coming in the form of instruction. I can't help you. You must approach my devotee. That's compassion, but it's not the compassion that originally Durvasa Muni had in mind. He was saying, you are the supreme all in all, save me. But Lord Narayan is saying, you offended my devotee. You have to approach my devotee. I'm under the control of my devotee. So the compassion is there, but it has to be accessed in the right way. And by approaching me directly, in spite of your overlooking or insulting or even threatening to kill my devotee, that's not the right way to access my compassion. But if you approach my devotee, then you can access the compassion that I have in that way. And think about the glories of the devotee. Why is the Supreme Personality of Godhead so eager to come under their control? Because a real devotee doesn't even want liberation, freedom from material existence. A real devotee just wants service, how to give Krishna the best pleasure. So basically, Lord Narayan is telling Durvasa Muni, you ignorant Brahmana, you don't understand the transcendental system. As the great Acharya Narottama Das Thakur says, Chariya Vaishnava Seva Nishta Paye Che Keva. Who do you know who ever got out of material existence without pleasing a Vaishnava? So this is a very strong lesson for Durvasa Muni and for us all. Rama couldn't save him, Durvasa Muni. Shiva couldn't save Durvasa Muni. And now Narayan is telling Durvasa Muni, I can't save you also. And in the process of explaining that, Lord Narayan is revealing how dear to his heart are the devotees, even the devotees of the devotees. So this is how rare it is to be a devotee. We use the term very casually, but to be a real devotee means to be so bound up with Krishna's pleasure that Krishna wants to come under your control. So we'll go to the next text, 64. Naham atmanam asha se mad bhaktai sadhu bir vina. Shriyam chatyantikim brahman yesham gatir aham para. O best of the Brahmanas, without saintly persons for whom I am the only destination, I do not desire to enjoy my transcendental bliss and my supreme opulences. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead in so many words saying, my life is not complete without my devotees. My enjoyment is not complete. But this is the personal arrangement of Lord Narayan. Nothing is out of his control, but he agrees to come under the control of such devotees. He agrees that his pleasure is not complete without his devotees. So this is very personal. And I'd like you to try to feel the impact of how personal this is, so that your bhakti will be enriched, rather than you're subconsciously being an impersonalist. You just chant Hare Krishna, you engage in Krishna's service, and then you become attached to the whatever, and your future is better. That's all we know. You don't suffer as much right now, and your future is better. Everything's kind of vague. No, these verses that we're reading reveal the heart of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he's talking to Durvasa Muni, best of the Brahmanas. But this best of the Brahmanas is ignorant of how the transcendental system works. All this best of the Brahmanas knows is liberation and mystic powers. But the realm of the Bhakti yogis is far beyond all that. Yet we take that superior realm so casually. I'm a devotee, you're a devotee, you can take it or leave it. When actually it's such a personal thing to be a devotee. Even from the very beginning, you have captured Krishna's attention. But the question will be, how will you develop? So we'll hear the purport of text 64. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is self-sufficient, but to enjoy his transcendental bliss, he requires the cooperation of his devotees. He's made it that way. Doesn't contradict that he's independent, but he's out of his personal desire, he's made a system for his own pleasure. In Vrindavan, for example, although Lord Krishna is full in himself, he wants the cooperation of his devotees, like the cowherd boys and the gopis, to increase his transcendental bliss. Such pure devotees who can increase the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are certainly most dear to him. So this is the wonder of Vrindavan, especially the residents of Vrindavan. They act in such a way, whether they're cowherd boys or gopis or cows or trees or the Yamuna River, everyone and everything is acting in such a way to increase the pleasure potency, the Hladini Shakti of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such pure devotees who can increase the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are certainly most dear to him. Not only does the Supreme Personality of Godhead enjoy the company of his devotees, but because he's unlimited, what? He wants to increase his devotees unlimitedly. Thus, he descends to the material world to induce the non-devotees and rebellious living entities to return home back to Godhead. He requests them to surrender unto him, because unlimited as he is, he wants to increase his devotees unlimitedly. The Krishna consciousness movement is an attempt to increase the number of pure devotees of the Supreme Lord more and more. It is certain that a devotee who helps in this endeavor to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes indirectly a controller of the Supreme Lord. It is certain that a devotee who helps in this endeavor, although the Supreme Lord is full in 6 opulences, he does not feel transcendental bliss without his devotees. An example that may be cited in this regard is that if a very rich man does not have sons in the family, he does not feel happiness. Indeed, sometimes a rich man adopts a son to complete his happiness. The science of transcendental bliss is known to the pure devotee. Therefore, the pure devotee is always engaged in increasing the transcendental happiness of the Lord. So we want that science of transcendental bliss to become known to us. And that's why we're clinging so tightly to devotional service. As we hear in this purport, the Krishna conscious movement is an attempt to increase the number of pure devotees of the Supreme Lord more and more. It is certain that a devotee who helps in this endeavor He becomes indirectly a controller of the Supreme Lord. So there's our program. Krishna wants unlimited devotees. So his pleasure increases unlimitedly. And anyone who helps in that way gets the special favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So much so that the Supreme Lord becomes under the control of such a devotee. This is very intimate, very confidential, actually. Srila Prabhupada is explaining the inner workings of Krishna's heart. And that heart manifests, that heart of compassion especially manifests as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we have a lot to aspire for. And again, I want to stress to you that don't think this is, oh, so far beyond us, and how can I ever become that good and that dedicated in devotional service that such a verse would ever apply to me. But you have to begin somewhere. Otherwise, it's like a 5-year-old girl or boy saying, oh, I'll never become a teenager. It's so far away. But it happens. But maybe you can remember when you were 4 or 5 years old. You couldn't imagine what it was like to be a teenager, although it was only going to be 10 years later at the most. You couldn't imagine what it's like. I remember, watching teenagers as a little kid. It's exotic. What's it like? It's like they're like another species. I remember one couple, when in their late teens, was sitting on the couch together holding hands. And so I think I was just 8 years old, and I just walked up to them and said, why are you doing that? Why are you together? And they kind of looked at me and smiled. You'll find out. It looked so strange to me. Come on, there's plenty of room on the couch. Just move apart. She'll be all right. You don't have to hold her hand. She's a could understand it. I thought it was so far off and far out. But when you're 8 years old, teenage years are just at the most 5 years away, but it seems so far, yes? So it can seem like that in Bhakti, that my spiritual life becomes that personal with Krishna. I'll never get there. I'm just doing Bhakti because I want relief from the material world. But even with that motivation, if you stick to the process properly, gradually you'll become purified. So we want this information to motivate us. It's purifying us by our hearing it. And we develop motivation and aspiration. And in this section about Ambrish Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada explains that the protection of Krishna begins from the beginning of a devotee. And that's a little hard to understand, because you're thinking, well, where is Krishna right now? I mean, I know he's there for Ambrish Maharaj. What about me? I need this, I need that. I'm not getting this, I'm not getting that. to see how Krishna is taking care of you from the very beginning requires some effort, requires some mercy from Krishna. Otherwise, you're like, let's say if you ask Gopal Guru's daughter, Yamuna, how the bills being paid at home? How's the mortgage being paid? The rent? Well, she doesn't know anything about that, but it's going on. But she can't see it. Beyond her comprehension, but it's still going on. Similarly, Krishna's care for the devotee is there from the very beginning. It's just the devotee is not aware of what's going on. And as you progress in bhakti, you start more and more as the years go by to realize how Krishna's protected your spiritual life. The body, one day or another, the body is finished. So when Krishna says to Arjuna, you declare it that my devotee is never vanquished, he's not referring to your material body. That's doomed, but he's referring to your spiritual life, which is the real you. I wrote an introduction to a book compiled by His Holiness Niranjan Swami about devotees in the Ukraine during the current crisis. The title of the book he's given is Krishna Protects His Devotees. So you may be wondering what it's like to be a devotee in a war zone. How does it feel to be a devotee in those circumstances? There's no water, no electricity. You're cowered in the basement of your apartment building as the rockets and bombs are exploding overhead. The mothers with their children are huddled in the basement. There's no heat in the winter. So you might wonder, what does it feel like to be a devotee in those circumstances? How is Krishna taking care of such devotees? So I told Niranjan Maharaj that we need 100 copies of this book for New Zealand because life can get pretty complacent here. A slight imposition by the government and everyone freaks out. No freedom, no liberty. You don't know what it's like to live in a war zone. "12 million persons have left the country seeking shelter as refugees in other countries." You know what refugee means? You left everything behind and you just take only what you can carry in a suitcase. Leave your home, leave your car, leave. And the men can't go because the men are meant to be in the army, unless you're very, very old. So the women and children have to choose. Do I want to stay with my husband or while the bombs and rockets are exploding all around? Or do I want to separate from my husband and go as a refugee to a neighboring European country and live in a refugee camp? So how are devotees handling this? And then the devotees who are of military age, how do they handle if they get called into the army? So I said to the Maharaj that we need 100 copies of this book for New Zealand so they can have a wake-up call. So you'll be seeing that soon.